Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Walkshow podcast. This is your host, Walker Neer. Up front, I'd like to mention that you can follow me on Twitter at the Walkshow Pod, Instagram and Facebook at the Walkshow. If you like the show, please take a moment to like, rate, subscribe, whatever your podcast app lets you do, as it just helps the show be more discoverable. I also want to shout out my other podcast, Pick Up Your Sticks, which is co-hosted by myself and multiple-time The Walkshow podcast guest, Brett Lindley. Pick Up Your Sticks is a podcast about video games, but instead of doing reviews or news updates, we try and discuss why gaming matters. So if you like gaming and enjoy thoughtful conversation about that, then it should be right up your alley. Again, that's Pick Up Your Sticks. On to the Walkshow. On today's episode, I actually share some thoughts on a few action movies I've seen recently, and then Misha Zarins actually joins the show yet again to discuss our fascination with criminal culture and movies and TV, and to some extent in real life, although I think both of us are mostly in the more cinematic side of that. Before we move into those segments, though, I would like to share some of my recent experiences and what I've now dubbed, I guess, the Tool Quote of the Week. For those of you who've been listening for a while, you're familiar with my own personal journey to be better, both physically and mentally. I'm still on that journey, which in itself is somewhat exciting because I have a pretty storied history of quitting. This time I haven't quit. The last week has been surprisingly filled with thoughts of quitting, however. I've taken to referring to the part of myself that feeds me bad ideas, like quitting my new routines, as brochure man. And I call it this because the bad ideas don't come standalone. They come with a whole brochure of excuses and justifications. I've had to confront brochure man several times in the last few months, but I've dealt with brochure man many times in the last few days. Even though I've been consistent in my new routine for a couple of months now, brochure man is still not defeated. This week he came with a thunder, but as of yet, I've still managed to break him instead of, the other way around. I share this to explain that this is all still very fragile. I always say I'm not coming from the mountaintop. Well, I'm not even coming from the side of a mountain. I'm still at the bottom, close enough to turn back around if I lose my faith. And I think it's only the fact that I've been consistent for a little bit that's enabled me to overcome my bad idea peddling self, this time. The Tool lyrics that I want to share are from the track Bottom on Tool's second album, Undertow. And the lyrics are, "If I let you, you would make me destroy myself. In order to survive you, I must first survive myself. And I can sink no further, and I cannot forgive you. There's no choice but to confront you, to engage you, to erase you. I've gone to great lengths to expand my threshold of pain. I will use my mistakes against you. There's no other choice. Shameless now, nameless now. Nothing now, no one now. But my soul must be iron, because my fear is naked. I'm naked and fearless, and my fear is naked." Now, I'm not actually naked. Sorry to disappoint. I do have a webcam now, so maybe I'll do some cam girl shows here soon enough. But so, of course, not literally naked, but, to me, the naked in that context is just kind of a way of saying vulnerable. And I've, like I was just saying, found that despite my recent, albeit short-lived efforts, I'm still incredibly vulnerable in everything in myself that has held me back before. Instead of conceding, so far I've chosen to confront, but it's, like I said, it's day to day. And that's something that, if you look in materials about how to improve yourself and how to get discipline, the power of habit, like I've talked about, or discipline equals freedom, they'll talk about, it's said that it's a day to day thing and you take it one day at a time. And that's, when Misha was talking last week about the power of habit and how he has used habits to not only overcome, his depression and anxiety when he was younger, but also achieve some really cool stuff later. He was talking about how it's moment to moment, it's choice by choice, it's day by day, and you break things down into little steps. And I've really had to kind of face that recently, where I have to break things down into little steps, and sometimes those little steps are just, multiple times within a single day having to say, what choice am I going to make now? And sometimes it's multiple times in a week saying, am I going to do today what I said I was going to do to myself. And luckily so far, fortunately I've been able to maintain that. And all I can do is just keep making those decisions one day at a time. I can't, like Misha was talking about climbing up the hill on a bicycle and how he just looks at the ground and then eventually he'll get there, but he can't look at the top of the hill or it's overwhelming. And that's kind of where I find myself now, is that I just, right now I'm just doing day by day. And I don't mean that as a complaint. It's actually somewhat empowering that I've been able to maintain, and that Brochure Man, despite his best efforts, has not beaten me. So yeah, to hell with you, Brochure Man. Thanks again for tuning in. As always, today's episode, music is by Misha Zarins. Let's jump into those segments. So I have always been a pretty big action movie fan. I would say, my favorite action movies are probably Rambo from 2007. I think it's just a really excellent example of what an action movie should be. Not too much dialogue, not too much emphasis on, character building, just simply like straight to the action. And that's what I'm looking for. And, I would say, not an emphasis on like a love story. And when I say that, people will come to me and be like, well, the love story is a good thing. Why don't you like love stories? And that's actually not the case. I'm actually also a rom-com fan. So it's not that I don't like, and those are admittedly somewhat cheesy, but it's not that I can't stomach something with emotions or something that is, again, romantic in nature or something. It's more just that oftentimes when they try and force those kind of storylines into action movies, they're really poorly done. And so it's like, why don't we just stick to what we're good at, and instead of trying to sandwich in all this other stuff. Anyway, so I think Rambo 2007 does an excellent job of that. The John Wick franchise, awesome. The Raid franchise is really good. Tony Jaa movies from 15 years ago now probably, but like Ong Bak and Tom Yum-goong, those are really good. But anyway, I'll probably talk more about those movies at another time. But so suffice it to say that I'm like action movies quite a bit, and recently have watched a few and kind of wanted to share some of my thoughts on them. The first one that I watched is The Accountant, which stars Ben Affleck, and Ben Affleck's character has high-functioning autism. And so in the film, as a kid, he is shown kind of struggling with that, and his parents trying to get him help. And his dad is a military guy who insists that he do all this rigorous physical training and, basically become like a soldier, even though he's not actually going to be in the military. Ben Affleck's character, this is. So anyway, as an adult, Ben Affleck's character is an accountant by trade and ends up being an accountant for a lot of black market, cartel, drug lord type characters. But I guess is able to protect himself is the premise, because he has all this military training from his, childhood as he was growing up. And yeah, it's actually a pretty solid action flick. I was surprised. It sounded like kind of a silly premise, but it ended up being pretty enjoyable. It's got some good, hand-to-hand type fight scene stuff, but doesn't try and go too far with that, which is appropriate because, Ben Affleck's not actually a martial artist or something. Although that doesn't really matter, I guess, because you look at John Wick and the Keanu Reeves performance in those, and those are some excellent scenes. And Keanu Reeves obviously is also just an actor. But anyway, in The Accountant, I would say it quality-wise is probably on par with like maybe a Taken or something like that, which Taken, again, I wouldn't put it up at the very upper echelon of action movies, but it's pretty reasonable. Taken is really, really dark, which is kind of tough to to deal with just because it deals with sex trafficking, and that's, I don't know, a pretty horrible subject matter. But yeah, The Accountant, I would say is worth a see. It's also got John Bernthal, which is the guy that played Shane in The Walking Dead in the first couple of seasons of that, or maybe just the first season. He's also the Punisher in the Netflix Punisher series. That's actually a series that I also highly, highly recommend. I really enjoyed The Punisher. It's too bad that the Marvel Disney relationship in Netflix didn't work out because Disney wants their own spin-off service. So now we don't get any more Punisher. But I really enjoyed those 2 seasons of The Punisher on Netflix. Really, really brutal. So if you don't like really brutal scenes of violence, then it might not be for you. But it's funny, as opposed as I am to violence in real life. I don't fight in my life, and don't encourage other people to get in fights or anything, and don't really want to see people getting bludgeoned or something. But when it comes to like an action movie, I guess because it's fiction, I don't know, I'm totally behind it and want want those more extreme levels of violence. And that Punisher series is good, but again, back to The Accountant, it's got, again, some really excellent scenes, and yeah, is a good watch. It's got good pacing and kind of pulls you through it, and ends at an appropriate time. It has a couple of little minor kind of twists or whatever, but doesn't rely on those to make the whole movie. So I thought that was good. Another one I watched recently that also stars Ben Affleck is actually a Netflix film called Triple Frontier, and it's actually kind of a bizarre action movie. The first 30 minutes of that movie are what a lot of other action movies, the whole thing is about. And so the movie starts out where it's these guys that are ex-military or something, and they find out about this drug lord in, I think, South America, who has enormous amounts of cash literally stashed in the walls, like in the drywall of his house. And so they concoct this plan to go and rob this drug dealer and steal this cash from his house. And it's a very kind of, it's not fair to say it's Ocean's 11 because it's not that sophisticated of a plan, but a sophisticated plan. And again, in a lot of action movies, that would be the whole movie. The movie would be about like recruiting the team and getting the people together and then executing the heist at the end. And then, similar to how like an Ocean's 11 or those kind of movies play out. But in Triple Frontier, that actually all takes place pretty early in the movie, that they plan and execute this heist. And then really the rest of the movie is about them trying to escape. South America with the money. And I don't know if it's supposed to be like an essay, if you will, on people's greed or something, but basically throughout the rest of the movie, because they try and keep as much of the cash that they've stolen as they can, they continually run into problems. Like their helicopter can't make it over these mountains because they've got too much weight, and the reason they have too much weight is because they've got too much cash. And then they just continually go through issue after issue. Ultimately, by the end, I think the movie ends with they don't have any of the cash. They end up having to leave it all behind. So it's kind of a bizarre action movie because the typical action movie trope, again, is satisfied really early on, as opposed to that being the whole thing. And the movie's a little more, I guess, kind of introspective, you could say, about the characters themselves and their motivations and then kind of the downfall of them with their greed. But yeah, I don't know. It was still an interesting watch, and it was a different enough take on the genre that I think it's probably worth a watch. But I would say The Accountant, the movie I just talked about, was probably more enjoyable. In both, though, Ben Affleck is someone who gets a lot of flack for being, not a great actor or something, but I actually enjoyed his performances in both movies. He's not like my favorite, and I don't think that it compares to, like, again, Keanu Reeves in the John Wick movies. That's really, really excellent. But not everything is going to be best in class. So yeah, I would recommend, if you're into action movies, I would recommend seeing either The Accountant or Triple Frontier, and they're both pretty good. Another one that I watched just last night is called The Prince, and it actually has a pretty good cast. It's got for an action movie, it's got Bruce Willis, it's got John Cusack, it's got Jason Patrick, and so I was like, okay, this could be all right, and it looked like a Taken again style movie where there's someone seeking revenge, looking for their daughter, looking for their kid kind of thing. So I expected that it would be that typical fare, and it is pretty bad. The one thing it does have going for it is that it's only 90 minutes, so that's nice. That's another thing about action movies that I typically like, is that they be nice and short, because when they get longer, they just get bloated, and it's just not really that great. But the Prince is unsatisfying in pretty much every level. The Prince is unsatisfying as far as you really caring about any of the characters at all. The plot doesn't really make a ton of sense. The action scenes are really poor. I mean, there's a couple of hand-to-hand scenes that are, I guess, okay, but they're really really not that good. And then the gunfighting scenes are just really dumb. I mean, it's literally just guys running in straight lines at each other shooting, and the bad guys always get hit and the good guys don't, and I don't know, it's pretty bad. They try and go for the whole John Wick, Jason Bourne, Liam Neeson and Taken style character for the protagonist, where you're supposed to believe that he's this ex-military badass kind of guy that's very stoic and is just on a mission. And I don't know, it's just not, it's just really unsatisfying. It's just, I don't know that it's the acting as much as, the directing of it is probably the problem. And just the script in general, I don't know, I think it tries to put too much together. It pairs the main character with this really annoying college girl who doesn't really need to be in the movie. Like, the whole movie could happen without her character at all, and instead she just serves to be annoying. Which is interesting, because at one point she tells the main character that he's being really annoying, and I almost wondered if that was like a tongue-in-cheek moment where they are trying to allude to the audience that she is actually the primary irritant. Either way, I would highly recommend not checking out The Prince unless, like myself last night, you find yourself just unable to get to sleep and need something to kill some time with. But even then, there's got to be something better out there than that. There's so many movies and shows and stuff available now with all the streaming services. I just can't give it a good recommendation. The last movie I want to talk about is Fast and the Furious 7. Now, that is obviously a pretty marquee franchise, a pretty big franchise that a lot of people are huge fans of. Fast and the Furious is interesting because it came out with the first one and was hugely popular, and then the second one I don't think was quite as well received, and then the third one was like straight to DVD, that Tokyo Drift. So, it's just not something that I thought was going to be around after that. I don't think anyone did. And then Vin Diesel ended up taking control of the series and being the owner of it, and then kind of rebooted it. And I think they have like 9 movies now, and I think just this summer in 2019 they released a spin-off movie that's just got The Rock and Jason Statham, that's like they're characters from the Fast and the Furious movies, but otherwise independent of the Fast and the Furious franchise. So again, clearly it's making money. Clearly some people are putting their eyes on it and going to see it, but I can't say that I fully understand that. And yeah, Fast and the Furious 7, I actually just can't finish it. I've tried to watch it across multiple days, and I can do about 30 minutes. I mean, the first day I watched it, I thought I had gotten a good hour and a half into it, and I was like, all right, I got to shut this off. I'll try and finish it tomorrow. And then looked, and sure enough, it's actually it's actually only 30 minutes in. So then the next day I tried again, and again felt like, oh, this has got to be close to the end. It was still just another 30 minutes. There's some, if you like really fancy cars or something, then that probably tickles your fancy. I don't really care about that. It doesn't really do anything for me. But that's got to be about the only thing it's got going for it. I guess you could say the locations that they shoot at. They shoot in Fast and the Furious 7. They go to Abu Dhabi, and there's a scene where there's like these three skyscrapers, and they drive a car from one skyscraper into the next, and then out of that one and into the third one, which is completely, inconceivable. But I guess it looks cool. There's some neat shots out of that. You don't really see those kind of scenes in anything else, but it's just so bad. Like the dialogue is so horrible, and like I want to watch it. Something that me and my buddy Misha have talked about is like, what if these movies were actually made as satire? And I've tried to watch them with that frame of mind, because if they were written as satire, then they would actually be some of the most brilliant pieces of film that had ever been created. But it's so hard to maintain that illusion when you're watching it, because there's all this really bad comic relief that's built in, so then it kind of shatters the illusion that it would be satire. And they try and do love stories, and they try and talk about family, and they try and have Vin Diesel be like a believable character, as like a wise individual, and it's just it's just really, really dumb. The fight scenes are really bad, and I don't know if it's because of the fight scenes from movies like The Bourne Identity and John Wick and those kinds of things, or because I watch so much UFC, and so I've seen a lot of what actual fighting looks like. But either way, it's just it's hard to buy it, because the people just can't take a clean shot to the jaw from someone who's actually punching appropriately and still be standing. And if you can take one, you certainly don't take multiple. You just get knocked out. So I don't know, all those factors combined, despite Fast and the Furious having way better production quality than something like The Prince that I talked about before, I was able to sit and watch the entirety of The Prince, and the Fast and the Furious movie, I couldn't get through it. I had the same experience with Fast and the Furious 5. I was able to actually finish it, but it took me, I think, 4 watching sessions to actually complete it, because it's just so mind-numbingly boring and just dumb. just plain dumb. But yeah, that's the action movie roundup for today. So I'll probably watch some more and come back with some more thoughts, and maybe another time do some more deep dive on some of my favorites. But yeah, in summary, I would say The Accountant and Triple Frontier, worth a watch. The Prince, not worth a watch. And Fast and the Furious 7, absolutely not worth a watch. Hey, what's up, Misha? How you doing, man?
Good, buddy. How are you?
I'm well.
Excellent.
So we've been talking for a while that we wanted to have a conversation kind of about... it's kind of hard to position it. To some extent, our fascination with criminal elements or something.
Yeah. Organized crime.
But it's not really... Organized crime to me kind of means like the mafia, and it's not exclusively that.
No. It evolves much more into deeper concepts than that.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, I guess kind of what we're talking about, like, for example, I've always been pretty fascinated by, like, prison culture, and I did another episode before about that.
Yeah, right.
Like the show Oz.
Yes. Wire.
Yeah, The Wire. I don't know. There's a variety of shows that kind of scratch that itch, for lack of a better term. And like on YouTube now, like I watch, there's a channel called Prison Talk. Where,
yeah, I think you mentioned that on the episode.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, right.
Where this guy who spent 10 years in the penitentiary interviews other people who have gotten out, and they just talk about their experiences.
Right.
Or there's actually another guy who's more recently started, and his channel is called General Penitentiary. And he is actually like the guy who does the Prison Talk channel is a pretty calm and like doesn't try and doesn't talk about his experience in prison as if it was like cool.
Yeah.
And the guy in the GP channel, he does still a little bit more. He looks like he does steroids. I don't know, but he's got veins popping out and he's really swole.
Right.
But his whole position is more of like he's trying to do like motivational speaking. So both of them do
Scared straight.
Yeah, both of them do try and talk about like that. You know, you should live your life the right way and not end up here.
Yeah.
And the GP dude, I think, tries to. I don't know that he's trying to sound cool necessarily. That's probably not fair, but it's like, I don't know. He gets really, really animated in telling his stories and like gets really into like the moments when he was violent or when he saw violence and
sure.
But it's weird because it's not. You know, I want to make it clear that like, and I believe this is true for both of us. It's not that I think that it's like a cool lifestyle, and it's not that I'm trying to like celebrate it.
Yeah, this is not an advocacy for that at all.
And nor is it like
or endorsement.
Yeah, it's not an endorsement, but it's also not like a. It's not trying to treat these people that live these kind of lives like as like they're in a zoo or something.
Yes,
you know, like it's also not like that. It's more, you know, for me at least, like it's just that it's so foreign to the life that I live.
Yes.
And have lived, and part of that is luck, you know, and good circumstances and whatever. But it's just so foreign to me that it's like someone's life could be that way, you know?
Yeah. Well, and you and I have a common interest in this, and it wasn't really something that I thought that I had actually a common interest with anybody else. Not that I was like isolated or anything, until you and I had brought up the movie Goodfellas.
Oh, okay.
Because I remember you and I talking about it, and I remember seeing it when I was like 8 or 9 or something, and I just like was completely fascinated with it. Like I loved it, and you were like, "Oh yeah," like I used to watch it like all the time, and it's like that's so crazy that we both had that kind of response to like watching Goodfellas a lot that young, and like
there was a kid that I hung out with that was like, you know, my best friend for the first few years of my school life, you know, from like first kindergarten until like, I don't know, 5th grade or something, you know.
Sure.
And his parents were like super religious, so he wasn't allowed to watch R-rated movies for sure, and probably not even PG-13 movies.
Yeah.
Like he was watching like Three Ninjas Kickback. Yeah,
right. Oh man, I remember those. Good.
Which I never watched any of that.
Maybe. I don't know, we'll just give it a second.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I remember him telling me that one time I was at his house and I said that we were going to play Goodfellas. And the way that we played Goodfellas was, I said that I was like De Niro's character, and I think he had to be like Ray Liotta's character.
Right, okay.
But I don't even remember what we did. But I remember eventually I told him he had to leave the room because I was going to have sex, but I didn't know what sex was. But I just knew that you got in the bed.
Right.
Yeah. And so I had, like, there was like this Cat in the Hat doll, and so then I just like put the Cat in the Hat doll in the bed and then laid in the bed with it. But I didn't actually try and hump it or something. Like, I didn't understand anything about what sex was.
Right.
I just knew that was something that they did, was they had sex.
And that's what you're going to do as role-playing as those people.
Right. And all of that was super foreign to him, because, again, he wasn't exposed to any of that.
I'm like, what the hell are we doing?
Right. And then I remember, like, we kind of fell out, and then I remember talking to him again when we were, like, in high school, and he told me that. He was like, "Do you remember playing Goodfellas?" And told me that, and I was like... Wow, now I remember. That's kind of embarrassing and hilarious, so good enough, I guess.
Yeah, I do remember me being completely fascinated by it, to a point of it being, like, endearing. Like, I liked it. I had the same kind of reaction. Like, we're going to play, you know, Mafia. We're going to do this, whatever. Like, and I actually don't, you know, revere those people at all, or I'm actually very terrified of the Mafia. You know, like, this is not...
Or
like,
street gangs in general.
Yeah,
all of it.
Exactly,
Prison, all of it. Terrified.
Organized crime.
Yeah. I'm not a tough
cartels,
guy.
any kind of crime, right. But that particular window, for me, I think, is something that you touched on, where it's like, it's so foreign to my life. And I guess it's these people that seemingly operated outside of normal rules, and maybe that just comes from my own like natural like resistance to abuse of authority and questioning of authority. But it certainly just kind of came with like, oh, these people are maybe free, you know? I don't know. I never really analyzed it that much of just, but they can do whatever they want. They have tons of money. They have tons of cars. They kind of live this way that seemingly they can just make their own choices, and they're getting whatever they want, you know. Now, obviously, it's incredibly more dangerous than that, and it is incredibly disgusting, I would say, to a point where it's like, I can't believe that you're an actual human being. Like, so it's not revering them at all. It's just like very interesting of looking at it outside of my own fishbowl of like, how do people live? How are these people? How do you actually do these things on a daily basis and then go to bed and be like, all right, well, you know, I had to kill a bunch of people or rip off a bunch of people or deal a bunch of drugs or whatever, and then just be like, yeah, man, another day tomorrow, I guess. Like, it's so weird to me to have that kind of perspective.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. You know, I remember it was you know, I don't know, probably close to 10 years ago now, but I had to work. I was working in a call center, and I had to work on the 4th of July, and there was no actual calls coming in at all, but I had to work a 10-hour shift, and you know, I had the internet on the computer app, of course, and I ended up just finding this guy who had created this like entire database of all of the American street gangs.
Oh wow!
And just had like you know, sometimes multiple page, you know, but at least a page breakdowns of all of these gangs and their history and
oh my god,
like all this stuff, and I just combed through it. And I remember coming across MS-13.
Right.
But it was before MS-13 had really hit the national news or whatever.
Right.
I mean, I even remember going home after that and making a WoW character named Mara Salvatrucha because I thought it was, you know, whatever. Didn't understand how serious it actually was.
Yeah, sure.
But anyway, yeah, like it was, I mean, I don't know, reading that stuff, it's so... Yeah, like you were just saying, it's so outside the pale of like anything that I would even consider, and I just can't imagine enduring that at all, you know?
Yeah. I remember when I was 15, like my dad taking me to see Donnie Brasco. Like anytime a mob movie came out, I specifically requested that my dad take me before I was old enough to go. And he loves like true crime stuff, so he was just like, "Yeah, that's cool, that's fine." Not thinking, you know, what my perspective is, and certainly doesn't matter because I don't like these people. But it's like I was that like engrossed in it. Like, is it a mob movie? We're watching it. I don't care what it is. I'm watching it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it kind of like so. A Bronx Tale is another great one.
Yeah, definitely.
So probably, you know, I don't know if it's the most iconic scene, but one of the best scenes in it. I will say, actually, quick tangent. I also just love action movies, and I think that these movies that are, you know, gangster movies or whatever, are also generally kind of good action movies. So I think that's probably also part of the draw. You know?
For sure. And I'm a big horror enthusiast and thriller enthusiast, so there is an aspect of like the hit scenes and the whole level of like fear-based you know, elements that I found really interesting. Because I'm, you know, a fan of that.
But in the Bronx Tale, when the bikers show up and they want to drink at the bar or whatever, and the mob guy, Chaz Palminteri, I think is the actor's name, walks out and is like, you know, like, you guys can have a drink or whatever, that's fine. And then they're like, okay, and then they immediately like insult the bartender or break something. I don't know, they do something.
Yeah, right.
And then he's just like, well, now you can't leave. And then they lock the door, and then they just the mobsters just beat the shit out of those bikers.
Right.
Like, and it's just like, I don't know, like that's just like that scene, almost like an action movie scene, really grabbed me. And something else that we were just talking about before we started recording was like how much I like, you know, what I call prap school, which is pop rap, you know, so I do love me some Tupac and some, you know, I don't know, I would even say Bone Thugs is in the category with me for that, where older school rap that I actually think is good rap.
Yeah.
But Prap School is my pop rap again, is Prap. That's like YG and Meek Mill and Drake and 2 Chainz. And I don't actually think that it's a good rap per se. It's more like good kind of party music. And I don't even party, so I don't know why I want that. But,
right.
But there's a bravado to it that I like. And it's that, like, in that scene I just talked about, it was like, now you just can't leave. Like, it's that same bravado of just, like, I don't know, that I'm drawn to.
No, I think that's super interesting because I also really like that particular aspect. Now, obviously, I don't listen to pop rap like you do, so, like,
Your loss.
Yeah, right. I do like a lot of hip-hop, and I do like old school rap, but I like more... In that kind of vein, I like more like KRS-One, Public Enemy, NWA, Chronic, that kind of era. You know, like still kind of in tied with Tupac and Dre, but I like much more like the conscious jazz rap style.
Sure.
But that's super interesting because I actually never really thought about the fact that what I liked most about maybe like mafia movies in general, which led me into like an interest with gang culture and crime culture, is that they take control of conflict. Like, they never get punked. The whole mentality is that you handle anybody trying to disrespect you and that you don't get the short end of the stick. You actually come out on top by controlling the situation.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, they take it to the extreme measures, and not rappers. I mean, some rappers do. But really, it was just that kind of, like you said, bravado, where it's like, especially to someone that's young and coming up and trying to build up your identity, like, you can latch onto those things in a healthy way, like, you know, hip-hop, where it's like, it does become a part of your personality that you can use to, like, gain yourself as an influence to how you look and interact with the world around you.
Yeah, I mean, we also grew up, you know, mostly, I mean, we were born in 83 and 84.
Yeah.
But, so we were, you know, our childhood, because, you know, up through 89, 90, we're 6, 7, so you're a baby and, you know, a very young child, so don't remember a ton of that.
Right.
But from, like, 10 through teenage years is basically all the 90s. Well, the 90s was also the height of street gangs. Like,
yeah, right.
Like, I remember watching a documentary on HBO when I was, like, 9 or 10, because it came out in 92, 93, somewhere in there, called Bangin' in Little Rock. That's about the Bloods and the Crips who were, like, literally fighting.
Oh, my God, holy shit.
Like, doing shootouts in front of the governor's mansion.
Yeah, right.
Like,
I remember that being, like, a huge topic of conversation, a hot topic for pop culture. It was like the Bloods and the Crips. Like, you couldn't even get British Knights shoes without them actually being, like, problematic in school. Like, well, can't really let you wear British Knights because we don't want to give the impression that you're a gang member because it says blood killer on it, you know, for BK. And it's like, that's crazy that it actually influenced that level.
Yeah, it's a Springfield, Missouri, where there is not really a population of that.
Right.
Yeah.
In elementary school. I mean, 4th grade.
Right.
I don't know anything. I just bought some shoes. What the hell are you talking about? Like, well, watch out for that kid. He's got BKs on.
Right. Yeah. But so, I mean, I think that's part of it, too, is just that at, you know, our most impressionable time in our lives, when you're a kid, that was just something that was in the media a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, it just kind of extended on. You know, like I said, you know, the Oz was definitely a show that I watched a lot that influenced me quite a bit.
I think we both maybe watched it when it was actually on. I don't know if you did.
I watched it when it was on, and then...
I did too.
But then I went back and actually rented it all from Blockbuster in like 2005.
Yep, I did the same thing. Watched it all.
It actually is good for the first, like, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 seasons.
Yeah, it doesn't really hold.
And then it just runs out of steam.
Right.
I mean, it's just because how many storylines can you do in prison?
Oh yeah. Did you ever see the show Gangland?
Yeah, that was like the History Channel show where they introduced a new gang every episode.
It was incredibly fascinating. Like, I used to just like binge watch it.
Same.
But it becomes like redundant.
Formulaic. Yeah, basically it's a gang exists and they think that they're the most vile horrible thing that they, you
Right.
know, could be. They're like, yeah, we're the hardest ever.
Yeah.
And then they do violent stuff and probably sell drugs and
Yeah, right.
that's-
They're all just the exact same. We're in a club, and this is what we do, and we sell drugs, and we elicit, prostitution, and we have strip
Right.
clubs and whatever. And it's like, man, you're all kind of the same, really, I guess.
Right, yeah. And The Wire actually came out. I mean, I think it started maybe like 01 or something, 02, somewhere in there.
something like that. Yeah.
But I didn't watch it until like 2012.
Yeah.
So it was
I
much
think
later.
Maybe you and I started at the same time. I can't.
You had
remember.
already watched it.
I had. Okay.
Because you were the one that insisted that I watch it. Because you were always like,
yeah.
it is the best show. And I thought it was
Still.
a police procedural.
Yeah,
like a Law and
right.
Order. And I was like, I'm not, or NYPD Blue. And I was like, I'm not watching that. I don't care.
Yeah,
And you're like, no, it's not. And it is so not that.
No, at all. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I would say it's the best TV show I've ever seen. Now,
Absolutely.
that comes with a grain of salt. I haven't watched Game of Thrones. I have watched Dexter. Didn't watch all of Breaking Bad. Haven't watched The Walking Dead. Like, there's a lot of show. I haven't watched Mad Men.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shows that are considered really, really good
Right.
shows now that I just haven't seen. So
I'd still like compare it to like even not even stuff in the same genre like Seinfeld,
Yeah.
Arrested Development, like all of my favorite shows, regardless of their genre, like it's up there, just in its quality of what it's doing, in its position to like tell a story from so many different perspectives. Because it's not just like here's these characters and then you just follow them until their end of their storylines. Like
right.
it's a little bit more different than that. And
Yeah.
you become aware of that as the writer actually does each season. You see he's trying to tell the exact same story as in season 1 from multiple different perspectives, and then seeing how it all culminates together at the end.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say that the Wire, you know, I don't know what the intent of it is. I know it's 5 seasons. It was all written before they filmed it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of more, it feels more like a story that you would read in a book than it does
Yes.
a TV show where they're writing it by season.
Yeah, right.
But to me, the point that it kind of made, I thought, was just that, like, corruption exists at every level.
Yes.
And corruption doesn't exist just because people are evil.
Yes.
But because when you make deals with people, you end up compromising, and then those compromises, you know, could be that now lead to corruption or at the very least corrupt looking actions.
Yeah.
But it's not specific to the gangs or the police. Like, by the end, you've got like a shipping yard involved, the media, a school system,
Yes.
the police, and the gang stuff.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know.
Well, that's why I said that it was told from different perspectives,
Yeah.
because each season revolves around that aspect. You do
Right.
have a shipping yard in the season 2, then you have the school, then you have the media, so it doesn't just look at these characters, you know, the police on one side and then the dealers on the other side, and then seeing how they conflict with each other, and then you just watch that for 5 seasons.
Which is what season 1 kind of paints it to be.
It does.
That's what it
and
starts
it wraps
as.
itself up in that in season 5, but you have to go through all the other elements that revolve around what crime actually is and why these people are doing what they're doing.
Right.
And it's never just that people are criminals because they want to do evil things, which is kind of a common perspective of people that see
Right.
good and bad. They're just like, well, that person, Hitler did evil things because he was an evil maniac. And he was like, yeah, but he wasn't like a villain in like a Marvel comic where he's like putting his fingers together like Mr. Burns and he's plotting things and he's just like, he knows he's evil. Like, he thinks he's doing something good. He's just going about it from a very crazy, everyone else in the world thinks he's fucking insane except the people that are following him perspective. Like, he would never argue, or he would never agree that he was actually doing something evil. But everyone else would argue that.
Yeah, I mean, that's why back when we read Game of Thrones a long time ago, that's why I liked it so well, because it was the evil of the world was just people's personal motivations to satisfy whatever end they had picked, as opposed to like a Lord of the Rings style Sauron villain where it's just the evil eye and there's not really any rationality to why it wants to be evil or what it hopes to accomplish.
Right.
I mean, even Thanos in the Marvel movies, like you brought up, he actually also is more in the vein of like the Hitler thing, where it's like he thinks that he's actually saving the universe.
You at least identify with his position, whether or not you go like agree with his methods
Right.
of doing it, most people would say no.
Of course
but
not.
he thinks he's making this giant sacrifice of putting himself on the cross to do that. Like,
Right.
he sees himself as that person. So you will never be able to convince him that he's not that person because he sees himself doing that.
Yeah.
And so it just always comes back to this position of, like, not that criminals do that with that intent that, oh, I'm making this giant sacrifice for the greater good. But I watched a bunch of documentaries of hearing dealers talk where they're like, if I don't do it, someone else will. So why shouldn't I just step in and make some money? Because I don't really see any other opportunity based on the environment that I'm in.
Right.
So I'm only just fulfilling a need that exists regardless of me. It's not even my intent or my input. I'm just fulfilling a role that was vacant before I stepped into it. And then once I'm dead, someone else will do the same thing. And that's a huge fascination for me because it's like this cyclical environment that exists that's like, yeah, but you're still like ruining people's lives.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see your justification and
Yeah.
lack of sympathy and empathy for the people that you push because you see it as like a product that you push.
Yeah, but I think that whole environment lacks. I mean, I think there is also a lack of sympathy and empathy for that environment from society. So to their point, like, well, if I don't do it, that doesn't solve the problem. It
No.
still happens. So
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, I think the wildest version of that we've ever seen, it's so crazy to me how focused the United States is on Middle Eastern terrorism.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, yeah, 9/11 was crazy. Like, yeah, I get it. Death to America stuff. I get it.
Sure.
I'm not trying to say that there's not any sort of threat there or anything. But the cartels in Mexico
Yes.
are way closer.
Yes.
And
way worse.
way scarier.
Yes.
Like, we thought it was scary when ISIS, was killing people in some pretty graphic ways and taping it and stuff. And
Right.
again, not trivializing it. It was horrible. It is messed up. But the cartels, dude. Like, I watched a documentary. I can't remember the American city. It's not San Antonio. Whatever. There's an American city that's on the Mexican border, right? And then the Mexican city is right on. There's a Mexican city on the other side of the border.
Yeah.
The United States-Mexico border. Oh man, I can't believe I can't.
I can't remember either. It does start with Santa something.
Yeah, I feel like it does too. But either way, the
Yeah.
bottom line is that in the American city, there's like, I don't know, 100 murders a year.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that separates these cities is an invisible line that someone put on a map.
Right.
And on the other side of that line, in the Mexican city, there was like 1,000 murders in the first 8 months of the year that the documentary was made. Because it's just, the cartel is just insane. And it's like,
yeah.
it's just so wild how it can be that way.
Right.
Or like, I watched this other documentary where at the very beginning it shows these guys in what look like police outfits making methamphetamine out in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes and it tells the story about how, like, these cartels were taking over these cities, and this guy who was a doctor actually was like, had enough, and so he organized a resistance in his city, and they actually overthrew the cartel and pushed him out.
Yeah.
Well, so then he became kind of like a little folk hero, and so then he goes to the next city and liberates it, and goes to the next city and liberates it. But he's basically a vigilante, right?
Sure. Right.
And so the other problem is that, so A, they're operating extrajudicially, you could say. But as they continue to expand, they also continue to need more people. Well, soon enough, the people that they're recruiting into this freedom fighter movement were the same people that were in the cartel of the town that they just liberated.
Yeah.
So soon enough, the same tactics that the cartels use, like kidnapping and, ransoming people and stuff like that, starts being done by these freedom fighters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, then the Mexican government comes in because they need this vigilante group has grown into a pretty big problem.
Right.
And while they're fighting the cartel, again, they're also not serving the interests of the government, right? So the government agrees to make them an official police force and forgive all past crimes. So
Right.
clean slate, and now you're sanctioned, basically, right?
Sure.
To do these things.
Sure.
And yeah, and then by the end of the movie, it goes back to that first scene, and the police uniforms are guys that are in that new freedom force that was just sanctioned by the government, and yeah, they're just cartel members. They're just cooking the meth out in the desert.
Right.
So it all was for nothing.
Yeah.
Like there's this whole cycle of freedom fighting and trying to liberate, and it all just ended up back to square one where it's all the same.
Right, right.
I don't know.
That's why,
It's just wild.
I think you and I have talked about it before, but I feel like the only solution to that problem is just to legalize it. And legalize it in the areas that you can.
Drugs, you mean?
Drugs, because that's the only way that you can take control out of a cartel's hands. And if you don't do that, there will always be someone that positions themselves into power to do that outside of the legislation that's already in place. Like, it is kind of a need that will, because there's already a demand for it. So if you don't control the product itself and then have your own federal, whatever country you're in, arms to back up, your products that are being sold, then you're just leaving it to people that to do it by themselves, and they will always operate because there's $1 billion to be made on it.
Right.
So if you can't control the product, you can't control the quality, and you can't control how it's distributed, and all you're really doing is just fighting, a bucket of water that never gets patched. It just constantly just streams, always, because people always want drugs. Like, it will never stop.
The other thing is that the cartels actually, it's not just, and this is true actually of a lot of the street gang stuff. The cartels are obviously much more organized than that, but there's also a level of it where, like, there's almost like this Robin Hood effect, where, like, I've heard stories in Mexico where you're driving and the road is like dirt or gravel or something, and then it becomes paved, and it's like, why is it paved here? And it's like, oh, this is cartel controlled area.
Oh yeah.
Like,
oh dude, Pablo Escobar, huge at that shit. Like, because it's so hard for a government to fight somebody that's doing criminal activity when the majority of the population sees them as a hero.
Right.
So he gained a huge amount of trust from his own public to gain him as like this hero, and there's still people that revere him as being an amazing figure of I don't know, contribution to their society.
Yeah.
Even though he fucking blew up a plane of innocent people.
Right.
Just ruthless and murdering people.
Yeah.
Like, completely.
It was setting off bombs in downtown Medellin.
Oh, yeah. When Escobar, when Medellin and Cali were fighting each other, they actually, I watched a documentary recently about it, and they actually really couldn't compete on that level. And they were actually ones that were responsible for funding the Colombian government to go in and attack him. Like, they hired a bunch of mercenaries to work with the Colombian government to do that, because his level of violence was so extreme they couldn't match it, because they just were underwhelmed by the staffing.
Right.
Because he was already putting measurements in place with security, assassins, or sicarios, and just anytime anything needed to be done. The Cali cartel actually got a videotape from him as a threat, where they were like, we played the video, and all it was just all of their kids going in and out of school and showing how easy it was for him to track them and capture them, and you have to stop or this is gonna happen. That's crazy, that level of intimidation and Jesus, mass murder. Really, it's just wow, dude.
It's just incredibly ruthless.
Then that's why I think that it has to be legalized, because in the
drugs again.
The drugs again. So the
Not the
drugs
violence.
has to be legalized, because if
That's
you
the entire
don't,
money
they
structure.
operate on their own legislation. They operate on their own laws. They're just going to be innocent bystanders gunned down in the street because they don't live in the same world that we do.
Yeah.
And we talked about that before. All levels of crime, when you meet someone that's in that level of crime, a dealer or whatever, they are operating on a different level than you and I are. They are playing a game that's different. They arm themselves. They have watchdogs. They have people that surveillance for them. They have all kinds of crazy measurements in place, the same way that an organized crime or a government would. They just don't follow legislation at all. So the people that get caught in the middle are the people living in the world that we do, which is living under government law. I don't want to go to prison, so I'm not going to do that. But
Right.
Prison doesn't do anything for those people other than just keep them in a cage. But I mean, fuck, Pablo built his own prison.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go to prison, but I'm going to build it myself, and then I'm going to stay there, and I'm going to have everything that I want. He had a fucking suite for his prison cell.
Right.
It wasn't even a cell. He just couldn't leave his compound. But it's like, he just built himself a castle that he doesn't have to leave. Like, Jesus Christ. Like,
Yeah, the Narcos
insane.
show on Netflix was pretty good.
Yeah.
Recreation
really was.
of all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I don't really know, I guess, even where this conversation ends or goes, because again, I don't seek to glorify any of it, and I don't have like a solution for it. I mean, I do think that legalizing drugs, especially at least in the context of the cartel,
right,
goes a long way. But then, like, you have, like in Japan, you have is it the triad there, or is that China?
Maybe that's the Yakuza's in
Yeah,
Japan.
Yakuza. That's what I was trying to
Yakuza's
think of.
in Japan, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, they do the Yakuza. I can't think of the word now, but it's where you like. It's so stupid that I can't think of the word. Where you like go to the shopkeeper and you're like, hey, you have to give me protection money, but the protection money is from me. You're protecting yourself from me by paying me.
Okay, yeah.
I can't think of the word for that. But anyway, like that stuff goes on. However, the neighborhoods that they control are actually some of the safest neighborhoods you can be in, because no one's willing to fuck up, because they don't want the Yakuza to come after them. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, it's this weird, again, kind of like what we were talking about with the cartel, like it's this weird balance where they're this horrible thing, but at the same time they also bring a level of like stability and order. Now, I think, not to try and trivialize the Yakuza at all, but I think that they are more like American street gangs are, and like the mafia was, where it's more like you're most likely at least to be affected by it if you're in that life.
Yeah.
Whereas the cartel, like in Mexico, they don't give a fuck. Like, there's stories where they like go to like see a girl in a bar that they think is cute, and then just send the goons in to kidnap her, and that's just it.
Yeah,
like, she just gets taken.
Yeah, exactly. Or in a worst case scenario, they just have a shootout between each other in the street, and then there's just, or they'll shoot up a club or something where there's one person that's in a rival gang or a rival cartel or whatever, and they're just going to gun down the whole club, but there was only one person in there that was affiliated with the cartel, and everybody else was just innocent, and it's just like, I guess I got shot, even though I just wanted to come out and hang out with my friends. Like, I got fucking gunned down for no reason because someone else's asshole-ish, agenda.
Yeah.
It's just like, you can't just send in a force to stop that, because your ability to stop that is only stopping circumstances. There's still going to be a product that's being sold, an agenda. You can't control ideas. You know what I mean? You can't just say, like, well, I'm going to police your idea. Like, no, I mean, it's David Cross. Like, you can't have a war on jealousy.
Right.
You ain't going to win it, my man.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just like, you can't fight terrorism because it's not an armband that was worn on a uniform to identify, like, you're a Nazi. Okay, I see your enemy. Like, I got you. It's like, it's kids. They get in kids. They get women. They get whoever the fuck they can, and they will extort them, and they will bribe them.
Extortion is the word I couldn't think of.
Oh, yeah. Extortion, yeah.
That's what that is.
Sorry, yeah. And then extort them, bribe them, whatever. I mean, you and I were talking earlier about, like, 12-year-old hitmans that work for cartels that have killed hundreds of people, and, like, I didn't know, there was promised money to do a chore for someone that seemed like he had a lot of money, and so I did it, and now if I don't keep doing this, he said he was just going to kill my entire family. So if I don't do this, I'm going to lose my mom and dad. It's like, That's the level that you're dealing with by not legalizing the thing that they're selling. Now, you can't control, I would never advocate for, like, sex trafficking and, stuff like that. But, like, drugs, like, you can control drugs. We already control drugs. We already control tobacco. We already control alcohol. We're now starting to, like, control, like, marijuana. Like, just do it, because then you get the control. You get the profit, not someone else who's just going to murder people in the street when they don't get their way. Mm-hmm. Like, putting that person in prison doesn't bring back the 30 people they gunned down in a club back to life. Like, well, we got him. Like, yeah, but now his, fucking surrogate just came through, and he's going to do the exact same thing. Like,
yeah. Yeah. The I don't know. Like I said, man, the cartel stuff is the craziest. It is, as I said earlier already. It's just unbelievable to me that that is not viewed as like the biggest or most immediate threat to us, because it's like, you know, and now the two Sicario movies, I like pretty well.
Yeah.
But there's a guy on Joe Rogan. I can't remember his last name. His first name's Ed, and his Instagram is called Ed Manifesto, but his name is not Manifesto. But anyway, he actually served in the Mexican military fighting against the cartel from like 2004 to 2014. So he's like a decade of experience,
right,
actually in the field in this stuff,
right.
And and now he is in the States and teaches like security awareness training and stuff like that,
right.
But he actually said that the Sicario movies are, certainly they can be entertaining, but they're not really realistic as to how it actually goes.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
A little dramatized or Hollywoodized or whatever.
No, of course. Yeah. But it's certainly, you can just become a hit anytime. That was what was most terrifying to me about mafia movies, is that you can actually be a victim in that club. You're subscribing to a club, which is what all gang culture is. Just like any other club that you subscribe to, whether it's a religious one or a political one or whatever, like you're a part of a group now. They all view themselves as like, we're a family, like mafia families and shit. But really, you can get killed just for knowing information. You didn't even do anything wrong.
Yeah.
You were just a part of a group that was handed out to carry a task. That task got compromised because it was being investigated by the FBI. Let's say you were like boosting cars or overturned a tobacco truck or something. If you're involved in that and you know information about that and the FBI is investigating it, they'll just kill you because you were a part of it, and they're going to tie it up as a loose end. Like, that just happens. It's like, damn, you were playing the game, the dangerous game that you thought you were doing correctly, and you still got off.
Yeah.
By the people that you consider to be a family. Like, it's just insane.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, the prison gangs is probably... I don't know. It's not fair to say it's the craziest because, again, they're all insane. But the prison gang culture is just wild because they're in prison, right?
Yeah, right.
But they still exert an enormous amount of influence and power, and still have people on the outside killed. And,
right. Yeah. Right.
That's like those prison shows on YouTube I was telling you about that I watch. Those guys are from the California prison system, and that seems to be the most intense gang-wise is the California system, but I think it exists everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's the thing that maybe the general public doesn't understand in terms of like the level of corruption is that like the Mexican police, just like with the Colombian police, like the reason that like Escobar was able to get to where he was, or El Chapo, like either one of those cats, is like when you get to $1 billion industry that you're creating and you're making millions of dollars per day, super easy to pay off cops, super easy to pay off military to let your trucks through.
Or prison guards,
whatever. So you're like, yeah, you went to prison and you're going to stay there, but that person still has influence. That person can still control whatever they want to because their business is still existing outside of them. So they're still just running it from the inside. You can pay off guards, you can pay off wardens, like, they're people. They're people and they have money. If they can't be bought off, extort them.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't be like, well, you're going to let this person do whatever they want to in prison, or we're going to kill your entire family. And I'm only doing this because you're the one in charge of guarding them.
Right.
I guess I would try and go to the police, but maybe I'm still possibly going to interact with someone who's an informant for them. So I tell that person, but they've been bought off, and now they tell the person that's extorting me, and now they do just kill my... You know what I mean? Like, it's so fucking convoluted in this spider web of really awful, terrifying circumstances that it's like, it's far more dire than just like, there's a drug dealer, he's selling drugs, and then that's just stay away from him. It's like, it goes way beyond that. Like,
it does. Yeah. All right, well, like I said, it's something that obviously we've both been fascinated by for our entire lives, mostly.
Totally.
And yeah, all those shows that we recommended, I still think are great shows, and the movies are really interesting movies, so would still recommend them. But again,
it's just an interesting to see a different perspective
Right.
into someone else's life. Like
Right.
that's really what you're doing. Is just like take a second to look outside of your own echo chamber and just see that other people live lives that are way crazier than you could possibly imagine.
All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you again, Misha Zarins, for stopping by and recording that with me. It was a fun conversation. And I guess the the takeaways from this week's episode: don't do crime, don't watch bad action movies, and don't give up when things suck, because that sucks more, I think. Anyway, thanks for listening. Have a great week.